Welcome to the Quantanix YouTube channel. This is Time Travel Podcast, Episode 3.
Oh.
Today, get ready, because we're diving straight into, well, the really brain-bending world of the grandfather paradox.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic, a true thought experiment. Sitting right at the crossroads of theoretical physics and, philosophy.
It really is.
It forces us to confront some really fundamental ideas we have about time, about cause and effect, especially if we ever figure out how to, travel backwards.
Exactly. And the core idea, it sounds simple enough at first, but the implications get wild fast. Okay, so picture this for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
You, the listener, hop in your time machine.
Right.
You go back, maybe you stumble, maybe it's deliberate, who knows, but you prevent your own grandfather from ever meeting your grandmother. So there's the setup.
And immediately you hit a massive logical snag.
Yeah.
Because, well, if your grandfather never meets your grandmother, or maybe dies before that, then your parent isn't conceived.
Makes sense.
And if your parent isn't born, then neither are you.
Right. So you wouldn't exist to go back in time.
Yeah. To prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother in the first place. It's completely self-contradictory. The act erases the actor.
It's like that ultimate chicken and egg problem, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But with, potentially reality-shattering consequences.
Mm-hmm.
It really hammers home that basic principle we rely on. Cause comes before effect.
Mm-hmm.
But here, the time traveler travels back and eliminates its own cause.
Precisely. It's sort of reverse causation at its most fundamental, and it throws a huge wrench into that linear flow of events we generally assume governs reality.
And it's not just about assassinating Grandpa.
Oh, not at all. That's the dramatic version. But the paradox highlights that even, say, accidentally preventing your grandparents' first meeting, maybe you distract one of them, that could, in theory, ripple forward and prevent your own existence just the same. Any interference could trigger it.
So this isn't some, brand new philosophical puzzle box. It's been around.
Oh, for quite a while. The basic concepts, the logical tangles of time travel, they started popping up quite a bit in science fiction, especially in the pulp magazines back in the 1920s and 30s.
Right, the golden age of sci-fi, exploring these big ideas.
Exactly. They loved playing with these paradoxes.
And when did it actually get that specific name? The grandfather paradox. That's pretty catchy.
That term really solidified around the 1950s. It just became the standard sort of go-to example to illustrate this core problem with backward time travel.
The poster child for temporal trouble.
You could say that. But it's important to remember, while killing the grandfather is the famous scenario, the paradox itself covers any action a time traveler takes that would logically prevent them from ever making the time trip to begin with.
Okay, so any past change that erases the time traveler or their motivation or means to travel back? Got it.
Precisely. And, the grandfather paradox, it's just one type, maybe the most famous type, within a whole family of what we call temporal paradoxes.
Ah, so there's a whole classification system for these kinds of headaches.
Sort of, yeah. Temporal paradox theory tries to categorize these contradictions. You have things like bootstrap paradoxes.
Bootstrap. What's that about?
Think of information or maybe even an object that exists without any clear origin. It forms a loop. Imagine you take a copy of Hamlet back in time and give it to Shakespeare before he writes it. Yeah. Well, then where did the play actually come from? It seems to just appear from nowhere, creating itself. There's some things called information loops or ontological paradoxes.
That feels weirdly unstable. Like information out of thin air.
It does violate certain intuitions. Then you have the consistency paradox.
This is where the grandfather paradox fits in.
Exactly. That's the prime example. These involve actions in the past that create direct logical contradictions within the timeline itself. They're a frontal assault on causality.
And you mentioned another one earlier, Newcomb's paradox. How does that relate?
Newcomb's is a bit different. It's more about free will versus perfect prediction or foreknowledge. It sets up a choice where a supposedly perfect predictor has already foreseen your action.
So it touches on similar themes of determinism and cause, but not directly time travel itself.
Right. It explores whether knowing the future affects our choices, which has philosophical overlaps with time travel discussions, but it's not quite the same kind of causal loop paradox.
It feels like all these paradoxes, but especially the grandfather one, really shine a light on how much we rely on time flowing in one direction, cause leading to effect.
Without a doubt. The grandfather paradox strikes right at the heart of that intuition. An effect the time traveler's journey preceding and then wiping out its own cause.
Yeah.
It forces you to ask, is our understanding of causality absolute? Or could it be more flexible? For many physicists and philosophers, this paradox is seen as a pretty strong argument against the logical possibility of going back in time.
Because it seems to lead inevitably to these absurd contradictions.
Exactly. If the rules of logic themselves break down, maybe the premise backward time travel is just impossible within our universe's laws.
Okay, but humans love solving puzzles, right? Surely people have tried to find ways around this to resolve the paradox.
Oh, absolutely. There are several proposed solutions. One of the most well-known and influential is the Novikov self-consistency principle.
Novikov. Okay, who was Novikov and what's the principle?
Dr. Igor Novikov, a Russian theoretical physicist, he developed this idea around the mid-1980s.
And the core idea is?
Essentially, Novikov proposed that the laws of physics themselves conspire to prevent paradoxes from ever forming. If an event occurring in the past could lead to a paradox,
Like killing Grandpa.
right, then the probability of that specific event actually happening is zero. It simply can't occur.
So history is, like, fixed, unchangeable.
In this view, yes. Time travel might be possible, but only in ways that are completely consistent with the history that has already happened. The universe enforces self-consistency.
So the time traveler isn't some free agent who can rewrite the past.
Not according to Novikov. If you go back, you aren't changing anything. You are participating in the events that always occurred. Your actions were already part of history, leading to the present you came from.
Okay, so let's go back to our time traveler trying to interfere with their grandfather's past. What happens then, according to Novikov?
Something would always somehow prevent the paradox. Maybe the gun jams. Maybe they slip on a banana peel at the critical moment. Maybe they get distracted. Or maybe, ironically, their attempt to harm their grandfather actually leads to the grandparents' meeting.
Wow. So the universe itself kind of auto-corrects, or maybe pre-corrects.
That's a good way to put it. It ensures logical consistency. The timeline remains intact, paradox averted.
Okay, that's one way. What are the other major contenders for solving this?
Another very popular idea, especially in science fiction, but also considered in physics, is the concept of multiple timelines or parallel universes.
The branching timelines idea, like in Back to the Future when things change.
Exactly like that. That's probably the most famous pop culture depiction. The idea is, when you go back and make a significant change,
Like preventing your own birth.
you don't actually alter your original timeline. Instead, your action causes the timeline to split. It creates a new divergent timeline, a parallel universe where events unfold differently.
So in this new timeline, the time traveler might never be born.
Correct. But the original timeline, the one they departed from, remains unchanged. They still existed there. They still built the time machine. They still left.
I see. So the paradox is avoided because you're not actually changing your own past. You're creating a different past in a new reality branch.
Precisely. Your actions have consequences, but they play out in a newly created universe, leaving your origin point logically consistent.
That seems neater in a way.
Uh,
It allows for free will, sort of, for the time traveler to make changes, but without breaking the logic of their own existence.
It certainly offers a way around the direct self-contradiction. It's often linked to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, although that's a whole other deep dive.
Right. Okay. So we have Novikov's self-correcting timeline, and we have branching parallel timelines. Are physicists still actively working on this, like today?
Oh, definitely. The theoretical exploration of time travel and paradox resolution is ongoing. There was actually a notable study, I think around 2023, maybe early 2024, by a physicist named Lorenzo Gabasino at Vanderbilt University.
Oh, really? What was his angle?
He claimed to have found a way to resolve the grandfather paradox by integrating insights from general relativity, quantum mechanics, and even thermodynamics.
Wow, pulling out all the big guns of physics. What's the core idea there?
Well, it relies heavily on Einstein's general relativity. We know that gravity isn't just a force, it's the curvature of space-time itself, caused by mass and energy.
Right, space-time is like a fabric that can be bent.
Exactly. And general relativity predicts that under certain extreme conditions, space-time could curve so much that it actually loops back on itself. These are called closed time-like curves, or CTCs.
Paths through space-time that lead back to an earlier point in time.
Theoretically, yes. Think about really massive, rapidly rotating objects, like, say, a spinning black hole. The theory suggests they could drag space-time around with them so intensely.
Frame dragging, right.
That's the effect. Frame dragging, taken to an extreme, might potentially create these CTCs.
So if one of these existed, you could, in theory, follow it and end up in the past.
That's the theoretical possibility explored by some physicists. Now, we don't see evidence of large-scale CTCs in the universe as a whole, but Gavesino's work, and work by others, looks at whether localized conditions, maybe near specific types of rotating masses, could allow for them.
Yeah.
And crucially, his approach tries to show how, by incorporating quantum effects and thermodynamic principles along these CTCs, travel might be possible without generating the kinds of paradoxes like the grandfather paradox. The physics itself might impose consistency conditions.
That's incredible. The idea that the fundamental laws of physics might inherently prevent or resolve these logical knots.
It is. It suggests that maybe time travel isn't logically forbidden, just that the universe operates in ways perhaps involving quantum mechanics or the structure of space-time that ensure consistency. We just don't fully understand those ways yet.
So, beyond the physics, this paradox obviously bumps up against some big philosophical questions too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It immediately brings up questions about free will versus determinism.
How so?
Well, think about the Novikov principle again. If the universe guarantees you won't kill your grandfather, does that mean your actions are predetermined? Do you even have free will in the past if the outcome is already fixed to ensure consistency?
Yeah. It feels like your choices are constrained by the need to avoid a paradox.
Exactly. It suggests a kind of determinism, at least regarding potentially paradoxical actions. Your role in the past is already written, in a sense, part of the history that leads to the future, you know.
And what about other philosophical takes?
There's an interesting argument from the philosopher Paul Horwich. He distinguishes between affecting the past and changing the past.
Okay, what's the difference there?
Horwich suggests that while you might be able to travel to the past and be a cause of events that happened,
Like maybe you inadvertently inspire your grandfather to take up the profession that leads him to meet your grandmother.
right, you could affect the past in ways that were always part of history. But, Horwich argues, attempting to change the past in a way that creates a contradiction like killing your grandfather to prevent your own birth, he calls this auto-infanticide, isn't logically problematic, it's just impossible to succeed at.
So you can try, but you're doomed to fail because succeeding would be a logical contradiction.
Essentially, yes, the attempt can happen, but the successful completion that results in a paradox cannot. It aligns somewhat with Novikov, suggesting the universe just doesn't allow those contradictory outcomes. Your actions in the past, even if you think you're changing things, might just be the way things always happened.
Man, it really makes you question the nature of time itself and our place in it.
It does. Is time a fixed block? Can it branch? Are our actions free or predetermined, especially if time travel were involved? The grandfather paradox is the gateway to all these profound questions.
Okay, let's try to wrap this up. It's been a fascinating deep dive. We started with the core paradox. Go back, kill grandpa, erase yourself. Contradiction.
Right, highlighting the fundamental challenge to causality if backward time travel is possible.
Then we looked at its history in sci-fi and how it fits into broader categories like consistency paradoxes, alongside things like bootstrap paradoxes.
And the proposed solutions are key. Novikov's self-consistency principle suggests history protects itself, probability 0 for paradoxes.
Meaning time travelers just fulfill a role. They can't actually change the past in contradictory ways.
Then there's the many-world or parallel timelines idea, where changes create new branches, neatly sidestepping the paradox in the original timeline.
Yeah, Back
Yeah.
to the Future fix. And then the cutting-edge physics, exploring if things like closed time-like curves, allowed by general relativity, might offer a physical mechanism for time travel that inherently avoids paradoxes, maybe through quantum effects.
Exactly. Work like Gavesino's tries to bridge that gap between theoretical possibility and logical consistency.
And finally, the huge philosophical implications for free will, determinism, and whether affecting the past is different from changing it.
It really shows how this one thought experiment ripples out, touching on some of the deepest questions we can ask about the universe and our reality.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on this journey through time. It's been mind-bending, as promised. Be sure to like, subscribe, and tune in next time for more adventures on the Time Travel Podcast at the Quantanix YouTube channel.